His pregnant mistress took her place. Now the Alpha King will stop at nothing to find her. A true real-life story. Seraphina Voss had always believed that love was enough. She believed it on the morning she packed her small bag and moved into the royal palace. She believed it on the evenings she waited alone in a quiet room, while Kael Draven, the Alpha King, attended meetings that lasted long past midnight. She believed it even when she noticed the small signs, the perfume that was not hers on his jacket, the way he sometimes looked at his phone, and then quickly put it down. She chose to believe in him. That was her greatest mistake. And it was also the most human thing about her. Kael Draven was not an easy man to love. He was powerful in the way that mountains are powerful. Solid, commanding, unmoved by ordinary things. He had built his kingdom through years of discipline and sacrifice, and he wore his authority like a second skin. People feared him. His council obeyed him without question. His warriors would walk into fire on his word alone. But love, real, soft, patient love, was something he had never quite learned to hold without breaking it. He had met Seraphina 3 years before the events that changed everything. She was the daughter of a respected Beta family, not royalty, not wealthy, but honest, in a way that was rare in the circles he moved in. She did not try to impress him. She did not perform or calculate. She simply was, warm and steady and real. He asked her to stay. She did, and slowly, without either of them naming it, she became the foundation of something in him that he had never known was missing. He proposed quietly, on an ordinary evening, with a ring that had belonged to his mother. No ceremony, no audience, just the two of them in the garden, and his voice lower than usual, and her eyes filling with tears she tried to blink away before he could see them. She said yes. She would always say yes to him. That was the part that should have made him more careful. Lyra Cole came into his life the way storms do, quietly at first, then all at once. She was beautiful and smart, and she understood the language of power. She knew exactly how to position herself near the king without ever appearing to chase him. She attended the same gatherings, volunteered for the same committees, laughed at the right moments. Kael noticed her. He should not have, but he did. The details of what happened between them were things Seraphina never asked about directly. She did not want to know. What she knew was enough. There were nights he did not come home, and mornings he came back looking like a man carrying something heavy. She asked him once, gently, if everything was all right. He said yes. She believed him. She always believed him. The morning Lyra walked into the throne room changed everything in the space of 3 minutes. Seraphina had been called there to finalize the bonding ceremony arrangements, the official royal event that would publicly confirm her as Kael's chosen partner. She stood at the far end of the long table, speaking with the head of the Palace Events Council, when the great doors opened, and Lyra Cole walked in. She was dressed in white, her head was held high, and before anyone could speak, she announced, in a voice that carried to every corner of the room, that she was carrying the Alpha King's child. The room went absolutely still. Seraphina did not move. She stood very straight and looked at Lyra's face, then at Kael's. And that was the moment she understood everything. Not because of what Kael said, he said nothing, not immediately, but because of what crossed his face in that single unguarded second. It was guilt. Undeniable, unmistakable guilt. The guilt of a man who had been found out, not the shock of a man who had been falsely accused. Lyra pressed her advantage with the ease of someone who had rehearsed. She produced a healer's report. She named witnesses. She spoke clearly about pack law. A child claimed by the Alpha King, born of his blood, had rights that could not be ignored. The council elders stirred and murmured. Someone called for a formal review. The room became loud with voices, but Seraphina heard none of it anymore. She reached into the collar of her dress and removed the engagement ring, the one that had belonged to Kael's mother, and set it on the table without a word. Then she walked to the door. She did not run. She did not cry. She simply walked, with her back straight and her face calm, and she did not look at Kael even once. He did not call her back. That silence, those few seconds when his voice could have stopped her and did not, was the thing that stayed with her the longest. Not Lyra's announcement, not the council's reaction, not even the ring she left behind. It was the silence. It told her everything she needed to know about where she stood. Her brother Dominic was waiting outside the palace gates. He had always been that way, present before she even knew she needed him. He asked no questions. He simply put her bag in the back of his truck, opened the passenger door, and drove. They crossed 3 territory borders before either of them spoke. When Seraphina finally did speak, it was not to cry or to explain. She only said, "I need to disappear for a while." Dominic nodded once and said, "I know a place." The village was small and quiet, tucked into the base of a mountain range far from the Northern Territory. It had no pack affiliation, no royal connection, no reason for anyone from Kael's world to ever look there. Seraphina took a room above a small herbalist shop owned by an old woman named Mira, who asked no questions and expected nothing. In exchange for her room and meals, Seraphina helped in the shop, sorting dried plants, preparing remedies, delivering orders to the villagers who could not walk far. The work was simple. The days were quiet, and slowly, the noise inside her head began to settle. It was 6 weeks into her new life that she discovered she was pregnant. She sat on the edge of her small bed for a long time after she found out, staring at the wooden floor. She had not planned this. She had not expected it. And now, holding this knowledge alone in a room the size of a closet, she had to decide what kind of woman she was going to be. She decided she was going to be the kind of woman who raised her child well, loved fiercely, and never once used her baby as a reason to go back to a man who had let her walk out of a room without a word. The decision was not easy, but it was clear, and clarity, she was learning, was worth more than comfort. Back in the Northern Territory, Lyra's victory was beginning to show its cracks. It was Elara Minth who first noticed something wrong. Elara was a healer, not the palace's head healer, but one of the quieter practitioners who worked in the lower levels of the medical ward. She had known Seraphina for years, and she had never trusted Lyra Cole, not from the moment the woman first appeared in the palace hallways with her carefully arranged expressions. Elara began asking quiet questions. She reviewed the healer's report Lyra had presented to the council. She cross-referenced the dates, and then she stopped and counted again, because the numbers did not add up. Kael had been on a military campaign for nearly 7 weeks during the period Lyra claimed the child had been conceived. The campaign records were sealed, but not secret. Any palace staff member with clearance could confirm the dates of departure and return. Elara had the clearance. She checked the dates 3 times. Then she wrote them down on paper and went to find Dominic Voss, who was still in the territory handling his family's pack affairs. Dominic read the paper. He said nothing for a very long time. Then he looked at Elara and said, "Find more. Don't tell anyone yet. Find everything." It took Elara 4 more weeks. What she found was patient, deliberate, and devastating. A bribed witness, a young man from the lower staff who had been promised a promotion he never received, cracked under quiet, private conversation, and admitted he had been coached on what to say. The medical report bore the name of a healer who, upon further investigation, had left the kingdom 2 days after submitting it and could not be located. And then there was the letter, found in a book in Lyra's chambers during a routine cleaning, tucked between pages as though she had forgotten it was there. It was addressed to someone referred to only by initials, and it described, in Lyra's own handwriting, how she had removed the obstacle and secured her position. Elara brought everything to Kael. He read through the documents alone, at his desk, late at night. No one in the palace could have heard the sound that came from that room, because he made no sound. He sat completely still and read every page twice. Then he stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the dark territory that bore his name, and he understood the cost of everything he had done and everything he had failed to do. He summoned the full council the next morning. Lyra was brought before them. The evidence was presented without drama, just facts, dates, documents, and the testimony of the witness who had broken. Lyra tried to speak. She was not permitted to finish. The council deliberated for 40 minutes and returned with their decision. The claim was false, the testimony was fabricated, and Lyra Cole was to be stripped of all palace rank and expelled from the territory immediately. She was escorted out before midday. Kael stood in the empty throne room afterward and stared at the long table where a ring had once been placed, and no one had stopped a woman from walking out the door. He did not need anyone to explain to him what he had lost. He already knew. He had known it for weeks, perhaps longer. The feeling of something essential being absent. The way the palace felt louder and emptier at the same time. The way he sometimes turned to say something and found no one there who would have understood what he meant. He began searching the next day. He sent trackers first. They returned with nothing. He contacted allied pack leaders in neighboring territories, quietly, without explanation. He hired a private investigator who specialized in relocations. He reviewed border crossing records himself, line by line, until his eyes burned, and every dead end made him more determined, because this was the one situation in his life where giving up was simply not something his mind would allow him to consider. It was Dominic who finally ended the search. Not by telling Kael where Seraphina was, he kept that promise to his sister for as long as he could, but by going to her himself and telling her that Kael was not going to stop. He has been looking for 3 months, Dominic told her, sitting at the small kitchen table in her room above the herbalist shop. The truth about Lyra came out. The woman is gone, and he is not the same man he was. Seraphina was quiet for a long time. She looked out the window at the mountain. She was 7 months along by then. Her body changed, her world entirely rebuilt from the pieces she had gathered on her own. "What do you think I should do?" she asked her brother. "I think," Dominic said carefully, "that you should let him find you, not for him, but so that you can look him in the eye and tell him yourself what this cost you. You deserve that, and so does your child." She thought about it for 3 more days. Then she told Dominic to let Kael know where she was. Kael drove to the village himself. No guards, no convoy, no announcement. He arrived on a gray morning when the air smelled like pine and coming rain. The village was small enough that it took him less than 10 minutes to find the herbalist shop, and there she was, standing outside on the small wooden step, a shawl over her shoulders, and a life visibly growing inside her that he had known nothing about. He stopped walking when he saw her. She looked at him with steady eyes. She did not smile. She did not retreat. She simply waited. He walked to her slowly, as though he was afraid the moment might break if he moved too fast. When he was close enough that she could have reached out and touched him, he stopped. He did not offer excuses or explanations. He did not begin with his own pain. He looked at her, really looked at her, in a way he had not done nearly enough when she was beside him every day. And then he lowered himself to one knee on the wooden step and said, "I found you." She looked down at him. Her voice was calm. "You're too late." "Tell me what it costs," he said. "I will pay it, every single day, for as long as you will let me." She did not answer right away. She looked past him at the quiet village street, at the mountains in the distance, at the life she had built from nothing, when the one she planned fell apart. Then she looked back at him. "Get up," she said quietly. "Come inside. I will make tea, and then you will listen. Not talk, listen." He stood. He followed her inside. He sat at the small kitchen table where her brother had sat 3 days before, and he listened. She spoke for a long time, about the walk out of the throne room, about the silence, about the 6 weeks before she discovered she was pregnant, about every hard morning and every night she cried once, and then refused to cry again. He did not interrupt. He did not defend himself. He listened the way a man listens when he knows that the words being spoken are the price of something he cannot afford to lose again. She did not go back with him that day, or the next week. She made him wait, not to punish him, but because she had learned something important about herself in those months alone. She was not someone who needed rescuing. She was someone who deserved to be chosen clearly, chosen honestly, chosen by a man who had examined himself and understood what he had done wrong. Kael stayed in the village. He found a room at the far end of the main road and he stayed. He helped carry supplies from the market on delivery days. He fixed a broken fence behind the herbalist shop without being asked. He sat with Seraphina on the evenings she allowed it and talked. Not about the kingdom, not about plans, not about returning, but about ordinary things, the way 2 people talk when they are learning each other again from the beginning. 3 weeks later, she agreed to return, but not without conditions. She spoke with his counsel directly, not through him. She required a formal, public acknowledgement that she had been wronged, not a quiet apology behind closed doors, but a statement made before the same elders who had watched her walk out. Kael agreed without hesitation. The statement was made, and when she walked back into the palace, It was not through a side entrance. She walked through the front gate, with Kael beside her, and every member of the household staff lined the path. Their daughter was born in early spring, small and loud and absolutely healthy. Kael held her in his arms and stood very still, the way he went still when something moved him too deeply for words. Seraphina watched him from the bed and saw, for the first time in a long time, the man she had originally fallen in love with. Not the king, not the alpha, but the man underneath all of that, who was just as capable of being undone by love as anyone else. It was not a perfect ending. There were hard conversations still to come, trust that had to be rebuilt slowly, days that were more difficult than either of them expected. But it was an honest beginning. And Seraphina, who had spent 3 years believing that love was enough, now understood something better. Love was the starting point, but it was honesty, accountability, and the willingness to stay, not just in the good moments, but in the hard, unglamorous, humbling ones, that made something real. She had not needed him to save her. She had saved herself. He simply had to become worthy of the woman she had become in his absence. And slowly, day by day, he did. Mun.